My fellow SEC fans, we got to talk about something here when it comes to Texas and Oklahoma. Now, listen, nobody, and I mean nobody, loves trolling opposing fan bases or getting fans riled up. No one enjoys that kind of thing more than I do. And I definitely do more than my fair share. But I'm seeing way too many comments from people, a lot of which aren't trolling. They really believe that somehow Texas and Oklahoma are going to come into the SEC and be 3-9, 4-8, struggle to make a bowl game, things like that. Is it possible Texas or Oklahoma in a given year, whether it's year 1 or year 10 in the SEC, has a bad year? Of course, it's possible. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the general assumption that, well, Texas and Oklahoma are never going to be relevant again. They'll be lucky to win 4 games. Let's just start with this, okay? In any general year, in any random or average year, throughout the course of college football history, or forward into the future, Texas and Oklahoma are going to be better. Again, in a random average year. This doesn't mean every year. It means generally speaking in an average, on average. Texas and Oklahoma are going to be better than Vandy, better than Mizzou, better than Kentucky, better than both Mississippi schools, better than Arkansas, better than South Carolina. My point is that on average, they're going to be better than at least half the teams in the SEC. And here's where I think some people aren't completely thinking through what they're saying. When they and look, fuck Texas and Oklahoma. I hope they go 0-12, but they're not. But people, they're not thinking these things through. Okay, people, I look, because I do a lot of call-in shows and live shows and read comments on my videos, so I see all this stuff all the time. Texas and Oklahoma, they're never going to beat Georgia and Alabama, and Tennessee would kill them, and LSU is way better. You're naming the best teams in the SEC. What are the chances that in any random year, Oklahoma is going to have a schedule that looks like this? On the road at Alabama, home against LSU, on the road at Georgia, on the road at Tennessee, home against Texas A&M, and then pick whatever other decent SEC team in a given. In other words, yeah, if Oklahoma or Texas in 6 weeks in a row had to play Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Texas A&M, whatever, fill in the blank, yeah, they would struggle against that schedule. So would anyone else, okay? Texas and Oklahoma aren't coming into the SEC to play Alabama and Georgia 6 times each in a season. That's not what's happening. They're not going to play Georgia and then Bama and then Georgia and then Bama and then Georgia and then Bama. That's not happening. They're going to play Bama, but then they're going to play Vandy. And then they're going to play Mizzou. And then maybe they play on the road at LSU. But then they're going to come back home and play Kentucky. Then they're going to come back home and play Arkansas. They're going to win a lot of games in the SEC, okay? Now, I am the world's biggest SEC homer. There's no doubt, no question about it. The SEC is currently and has been, generally speaking, over the last 25 years, the best college football conference in all of college football. Yes, and it is harder to run through the gauntlet of an SEC schedule than it is almost any other conference in any given year. That is 100% true. 100% true. If you're looking for things to kind of knock Texas and Oklahoma on, how many conference titles has Oklahoma won in the last 15 years? 10? I mean, I don't know the number, I'm guessing, but it's a lot. I think they won the Big 12, something like 7 of the last 8 years, something like that. Anyway, is that going to happen in the SEC? No. Oklahoma will never win 8 out of 10 conference titles in the SEC. Troll them on that. But guess what? Alabama ain't winning 8 out of 10 SEC titles either, or Georgia, or Florida, or LSU, or Auburn, or any other team you want to name. The SEC is way more competitive. Yes, there are better teams quality-wise in the SEC than the Big 12. It's 100% true. So maybe instead of, what is Oklahoma's averaged what number of wins over the last 15 years? 10, 11 wins a season? Okay, so maybe they come into the SEC and they average 9 or 10. Now, Texas has been in worse shape than Oklahoma, generally speaking, over the last decade or so, although Texas was better this past year than Oklahoma. And again, I don't want to, I hate that I even have to come on here and sort of sound like I'm taking up for Texas and Oklahoma, because Lord knows that's not what I'm doing. But people seem to be under the impression that, since Texas or Oklahoma is not as good as Georgia and Alabama, that they're going 0-9 in the SEC every year. That's just not the case, okay? I love the SEC. Every year in the SEC, there's 3 or 4 doormats. It just happens. Texas A&M was one of the worst teams in the Power 5 last year. Vandy's one of the worst teams in the Power 5 every single year. Kentucky and Mizzou are 7, 8-win type programs in the SEC. Texas and Oklahoma are going to be better than that. Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Ole Miss is in its heyday right now, from Hugh Freeze on to now Lane Kiffin. I mean, they've had some decent seasons, but look at Ole Miss last year. Started 7-0 or whatever it was, 6-0, whatever. That's great. But then they lost 4 of their last 5 games. They finished like 7-5 or something. Mississippi State, once every decade, they win 8 or 9 games. These aren't teams that are going to consistently be beating a Texas or an Oklahoma. It's not going to happen. And here's more breaking news. It's not going to take very long for Texas or Oklahoma or both to beat an Alabama or a Georgia or a Tennessee or an LSU in any random season down the road. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So if you want to troll the Oklahoma and Texas fans, tell them they're not winning the SEC. That's reasonable right now. That's reasonable. Now that we know Texas and Oklahoma are coming into the SEC in the 2024 season, I think it's reasonable to predict that maybe they don't win the SEC in their first couple of seasons. It's unrealistic to try to tell me what their record will be, though. You don't even know who they're playing. You can assume that Texas and Oklahoma are going to play each other the first year in the SEC. You can assume that Texas is going to play Texas A&M the first year in the SEC, most likely. Outside of that, you don't have any idea who the other 8 SEC games are going to be for Texas and Oklahoma. What if Texas and Oklahoma draws this schedule? What if let's take Oklahoma year 1 in the SEC, okay? Let's say they play Vandy, South Carolina, Missouri, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Bama, and Auburn. How many of those games are they losing? 1? 2? That's a 9-win season. Now, of course, if they have to play Georgia, Bama, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, whatever, to pick the 7, 8 best teams in the SEC, okay, then they'll lose 3 or 4. But that's not going to be happening year in and year out. We need to try to live in the realm of reality here when we talk about Texas and Oklahoma and what it means for them joining the SEC. Yes, the SEC is better than the Big 12. Yes, Texas and Oklahoma's schedule is going to be more difficult, no matter what the schedule is, in the SEC than it was in the Big 12. Those things are 100% true. But the idea that Texas and Oklahoma are never making a bowl game again, or never winning the SEC, or they're going to be stuck winning 4 and 5 games a year, like I said, some of you are trolling when you do that, but some of you really believe it. I know some of you believe it because some of you really believe that, like, the Big Ten is no good. Like, it's not even that you like, I agree with you, the SEC is the best conference, but like, some of you just think that means every other conference is just complete garbage. And it's just not true. The Big Ten's a pretty good conference, generally speaking, from year to year. So try to stay in reality, because what's happening is you're going to get a lot of Texas and Oklahoma fans who start getting on the internet and wandering over to SEC type channels. And if all they see is the lowest common denominator of idiocy in the comment section, like, well, Oklahoma better get used to going 4 and 8 every year. Again, if you're trolling, have your fun with it, but some of you are serious, and you need to really think about what you're saying and think it through. Think about a potential SEC schedule for a Texas or Oklahoma, okay? And think about the teams I listed at the beginning of the video. Texas and Oklahoma are better in any random year than about half the teams in the SEC. Have a good morning.